and public. Notices were duly posted, and the meeting was advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat and Courier News. Formal action may be taken. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bettman.
I'm here.
Mrs. Fiore.
Here.
Mrs. Minzer.
Here.
Mr. Feet.
Here.
Mrs. Pogorski. Mrs. Ryan.
Here.
Mrs. Wolf.
Here.
Dr. Siciello.
Here.
Ms. Engel.
Here. Can we all rise for the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'll lead over to Dr. Hart.
Good evening, everyone. Dan, if you could bring up the presentation, that would be great. I know you're still admitting people. Take your time. So around this time of year, what I'd like to do is review our enrollment projections, our planning for next year, as well as our housing development projections. This is a conversation, as you'll see once Dan brings up the presentation, that we've been having for the past several years because of the developments that are coming into our township. And you can see from all of the dates dating back to 2021, and there are some dates even before that, that the board's been having a conversation about housing developments and enrollment in our township over the past couple of years. This has been years worth of planning, but what I'd like to do, because we've hit the new year, January, and we're in the throes of budget planning and projecting for next year, I think it'd be an appropriate time just to give you another update regarding enrollment and regarding housing developments. I will mention, though, as I give this presentation, because it's been given multiple times, there are a couple of key slides that I want to focus on. So there are some that we're going to go through a little faster, but I want to make sure that after we're done tonight, this presentation is posted online in its totality, but I really am going to focus our conversation, my presentation to you tonight on just a few slides. So first, let's look at current enrollment and some trends. So here's our enrollment history. And you'll see, Jason will put this together in terms of budget planning for next year. So you'll see the exact same chart, but what he'll do is he'll project what we anticipate our enrollment might look like next year in the 23-24 school year, with what I'm going to speak to you tonight, which is the housing development that's gone in up on Route 22. So clearly enrollment's been on the decline for the past several years. We had a little bit of a spike of an incline in the 21-22 school year, and it's come down. This is really attributed to the fact that we're bringing in classes of kindergarten students that are about 130 to 140 students. We have classes that are graduating RMS that range anywhere in the 160 to 190 students. So we're graduating larger classes, bringing in some smaller classes without any housing developments. But I want to bring your attention to this slide as well. We talked about this a little bit in the personnel committee. What's interesting about enrollment, yes, it's on the decline, but there's a disparity that's happening between White House School and Three Bridges School. You'll see the White House School line is on the increase, where enrollment is increasing, has increased over the past couple of years. So while district-wide we're looking at enrollment decreases, White House School is increasing. Three Bridges has decreased and has now increased a little bit over the past 2 years. Part of what we have to plan for is the fact that 3 out of the 4 housing developments that are going in our township are being built in the White House sending region on the White House side of town. So White House's enrollment is already steadily and increasing. There's 1 housing development that's been complete. Three Bridges is decreasing, and there are more housing developments to come. 2 more in the White House sending region, 1 more in the Three Bridges sending region. So this is something really important to keep track of. This is what we have to account for when we do budget planning. We talk about increases in staff potentially, but when you look at the White House School enrollment, that's where some of that staffing is going. So our school configuration, just really briefly, here are elementary schools. You can see the disparity in enrollment between Three Bridges and White House. And then here's Hollenbrook and Reddington Middle School. Reddington Middle School enrollment will decline over the next couple of years. Those larger classes are graduating, and we have smaller classes that are enrolling in the middle school. So here are the housing development projects. Here is the Willows at White House Station. It was completed in 2020, 31 students in district currently in the Willows. And here's the current housing development that's going in on Route 22 West. This is the largest of the four. It's 254 total units. Estimation completion is by the end or mid 2023, so by the end of this school year. And it has a mix of affordable housing units as well as market rate housing units. Let me show you the breakdown a little bit more here. This has been updated since when last I spoke to the board in August. Garden buildings 10 and 3 are open. Garden building 9 is also open. We had anticipated back in August that everything up to garden building 5 would be open by this time of year. You can see in blue that the timeline has moved back a little bit. Garden building 8, we anticipate opening this month. Next month, garden building 7, and then this spring, number 4, elevator building number 2, and then building 5 and 6 are due in July to be open. So the timeline has been pushed back a little bit for the Ridge. This development, remember, is located up in the White House sending region up on Route 22. So by the end of the summer, we should have a good feel for how many students we should see for next school year coming from this development. And this is the largest one. The Bramco Interstate Ironworks, this is on Mullen Road, again off of Route 22, again in the White House region. We're thinking estimated completion 2024, but this still may be a couple of years out. This looks very similar to the Ridge at Reddington, 25% affordable, 75% market rate. So we'll have to plan for this, in coming years. And then finally, what we call the Diaz property up on Route 202 down in Three Bridges. So this is the only housing development project that would impact the Three Bridges school and looks almost identical to the Willows here up in White House Station. 80 total units, that was 72 total units. So when we look at the enrollment impact formula from 2018, and this is a slide I just want to spend a moment on, especially the section down in blue. So how are we planning for this? How are we getting our numbers? So we used the Willows as a baseline for our Reddington enrollment. So we not knowing what new housing developments would look like in our township, we used the Rutgers formula first. That Rutgers formula helped us estimate how many students would come into the district from these housing developments. Now we actually have a baseline data, which is the Willows at White House Station up on Nelson Street. So in year 2, I believe year 1, if I remember correctly, was somewhere around 20 students enrolled in our district from the Willows. In year 2, you see 28 students enrolled, which is 58% of the Rutgers formula. So Rutgers had us estimated that we'd enroll about 48 students. We saw in year 2, 28 students. That's 58% of the Rutgers formula. We're now in year 3, we have 31 students in district, and that's 65% of the Rutgers formula. So what I'm doing is taking a combination of what does the Rutgers formula tell us in terms of what our enrollment could be anticipated, and then what did we actually see for the Willows based off of the Rutgers formula. So I'm applying some percentages, some ratios up from the Rutgers formula. So all of the projections I'm going to show you on the next slide are based off of anywhere between 58 to 65% of the Rutgers formula. So if you take a look at this chart, the top development is the Willows. You see in the first column, the Rutgers prediction was 48 students. That would be our enrollment. Then our actual year 2 was 28 students that we got in district. Our actual year 3 was 31 students in district. And then the number of actual students that enrolled at White House School, this is year 3, is 16 students. For some magical reason, and I don't know why, it seems to be literally 50% of the students that come from any development end up in the K3 band, and then the other 50% are in the 4-8 band. It works out actually too perfectly, but that's basically the way we're using the formula here. Now the Rutgers formula is different based off of affordable units versus market rate, based off of whether or not it's an elevator building or condos. So it's a little hard to make a direct comparison from the Rutgers formula to what we could anticipate our enrollment to be, but you'll see the estimates on this chart. So I'll just go through the top Ridge affordable number with you. If we looked at the Rutgers prediction, they would say we'll get 41 students in affordable housing, from the affordable housing enrolled district-wide. If we apply our 58 to 65% from what we saw from the Willows, we get anywhere from 24 to 27 students district-wide, just from the affordable units at the Ridge. If we then apply the same 50% math, that they're going to be K3 students, 50%, anywhere from 12 to 13 students at White House only. So, hey Dan, could you or hide that sharing icon at the bottom? There you go. Thank you, Dan. So you can see, based on the Willows, in year 2 or 3 of enrollment, we could see anywhere from 235 to 262 total students enrolled in our district without the Willows included, which means about 100 students to 113 students predicted at White House and 16 to 18 at Three Bridges. So this is all based off of the Willows, year 2 and year 3. And this is down the road. This is including the Branco Interstate Ironworks and the Diaz property, assuming that all of these properties get built over the next, let's call it 5 years. We're talking about hundreds of students of an increase district-wide. This is also using the Rutgers formula and taking a percentage based off of the Willows. And this does not take into account our demographers report that we had that expired. Jason, I believe last year was the last year that we were able to actually see what our district numbers look like compared to the demographers report. But this is the enrollment impact. So if you go back to, and I'll slide back real quick, to overall enrollment, if we see another, let's say 200 student increase over the next couple of years, you could start seeing this chart climb back up from 1,400 to closer to 1,600. Maybe 1,650. The other thing you may start seeing is the numbers between White House and Three Bridges getting a little bit further apart in terms of the gap in enrollment between the 2 buildings. So our redistricting plans, I'll just let you all know. We talked about this 5-year phase-in approach. You'll see this past year, 22-23, this was the first year that kindergarten students on those redistricted streets attended Three Bridges School instead of White House School. And any new move-ins to that region of our township also attended Three Bridges School. This resulted in approximately 22 students being redistricted from White House to Three Bridges. 10 or 12, I have a slide on this, in kindergarten alone. Next year would be the next year. Next year would be year 2, which means that the next round of kindergarten students and the next round of new move-in students on the redistricted streets would go to Three Bridges as opposed to White House, and we'll keep track of those numbers as well. Here are the streets, how it changed. We did communicate as well with everyone who lived on the streets that were redistricted back in 2021. Chase and I talked about sending another updated letter to the residents to inform them of these plans and get a feel for how many students are living in those areas. You can see the 22-23 school year. Based on our letter, we anticipated 10 students moving in to kindergarten, and we got 10 students coming into kindergarten. So it was relatively accurate, at least for that first year. So we want to send a letter to make sure that those living in that area know what our plans are, and we can anticipate students from that region of our township. This is the Ridge. Here is when I talked to you in September or August, how many students we had fully redistricted. Our kindergarten enrollment at White House in September was 71. 12 students had gone from the White House sending region to Three Bridges, so it was a -12 for White House, but a +12 for Three Bridges, which brought Three Bridges enrollment up to 60. And then in student grades 1 through 3, we had an additional 10 students who were new move-ins who were also redistricted to Three Bridges School as opposed to White House. We are monitoring enrollment from the Ridge. December, we had 5 students enrolled in those 3 buildings at the Ridge. And now January, we have 7 students. So we're going to keep a close eye on how many students live in those housing units in the Ridge at Reddington, and we're going to monitor this on a monthly basis. We have a protocol where we run a report out of Genesis every month. So on the first of every month, we'll be able to know how many students are living there. Briefly, we have some historic White House and Three Bridges enrollment. I show this to you just because there is some room to grow. But you'll see that White House, even when they were of larger enrollment capacity 10 years ago, they were only at 374. But Three Bridges, we do have some room to grow. And similar with grades 4 through 8, Hollenbrook and Reddington Middle School's enrollment was, over, for Hollenbrook, it was about 100 students higher. 10 years ago for the middle school, it was, almost 200 students higher. So we do have some room, in grades 4 through 8 to ensure that we could accommodate enrollment from housing developments. So I know that was quick. Are there any questions from the board in terms of, our planning?
I have a quick question.
Please.
The families that are being redistricted, do they have older children? Like, would they be affected that they have an older sibling within that school?
So it's a great question. Any family who already has a child enrolled in White House School and has a sibling coming up, we grandfather them in to attend White House School to keep the siblings together. If a sibling is graduating or here in Hollenbrook or RMS and they're just enrolling in White House, we would have them go to Three Bridges. Yeah, we've made an attempt to keep siblings together.
Remember to unmute. Oh, sorry. I have a cheat sheet too.
Any other questions from the board? So just keep this in mind as we do budget planning over the next 6 weeks or so, that we've talked in personnel about staffing, and we'll continue to talk about anticipated enrollment projections and planning for next year and beyond. Okay. I'll come back. Thanks, Dan. No problem. Also, under my superintendent's report, I put in for the board and for the public to be able to see in the superintendent's report, I also put the RMS book recommendation. We received a complaint according to our policy to do a review of a book that appears in the RMS library. I thought best to put it under my superintendent's report so that everybody could have access to it and be able to view it. I know too, though, Beth, we talked about this in Ed Tech, and it'll definitely come up in committee report under Ed Tech as well. But we followed our process through our grievance policy. We convened a committee. The report was drafted by members of the committee. It appears in the agenda, and I know we'll talk in much more detail, during Ed Tech, and there may be questions from the board then as well. But I don't know, Carol, if you want to talk about anything now.
Did you want to introduce?
Oh, yeah. Stacy Cherry is here as well. Thank you for reminding me. Because this is something we want to make sure that we're following procedure and protocol when it comes to matters like this. When it comes to a book complaint, following our policy, what our protocols are. Board members, you all met Stacy last time when she presented about some legal issues and code of ethics. She's here to help us navigate the process if we need to, and take any questions regarding the process and even next steps as well. So if you have any questions for me, Carol, or even for Stacy, we're here to answer them for you as well. That's all I have for my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Hart.
You're welcome.
All right, we are now open to the public, limited to action items on the agenda.
Carol, I was gonna make some comments on it. Did you want me to wait until?
For the ed tech portion, yeah, after Beth reads in the
Oh, sure.
minutes. Thanks. Just state your name.
Yeah, I think I made it red. Did I make it
Is
red?
Yes.
Yeah, can you make it green? There you go.
My name is Ellen DePinto and my children attend RMS. I was surprised to see 4.05 motion to approve Judy Lobianco, HPE Solutions Consultant, in the amount of $1650 for professional development training for the PE health staff on district in-service day, March 17th, 2023. The consultant will be paid using ESSER and the ARP grant on the agenda. Ms. Lobianco sent emails to the curriculum department back in the spring of 2022 to acknowledge the political swell that was coming regarding the new sex ed standards, encouraging the department to stay the course and to be confident that the resources they are using are medically accurate, and reaffirming to our children
In this email, she speaks of asking lobbyists to keep an eye on the movement. She is the one who referred our district to Taz Weisgerber at Answer Rutgers to help navigate families and boards of education to control the conversation in regards to the new sex ed standards. She works hand in hand with Taz and mentions her on her HPE Solutions podcast. She's a past president of Shape America, which launched a task force to revise the new national health standards that included the director from Advocates for Youth. She's also mentioned on the Amaze website as having suggested playlists of videos for 8th graders. In her training, she refers teachers to use Advocates for Youth, the 3Rs resources, and the amaze.org videos, the very resources that you agreed to remove from the curriculum due to the backlash from the community after the parent meeting on 9/29. Ms. LoBianco has also called on the New Jersey Department of Education to, and I quote, provide serious penalties, not just a slap on the wrist or points on QSAC, to districts who do not fully adopt the sex ed standards that the organization she was past president of helped to develop. At the January 3rd meeting, your attorney, I believe who was here, reviewed the School Ethics Act and explained that the board is a nonpartisan governing body and must not be influenced by political ideology. Given that Ms. LoBianco refers to the political swell and has asked lobbyists to influence policy and supports and promotes activist organizations with clear political agendas, I feel you should not approve item 4.05 on the agenda tonight. I also have a concern that you are using the ESSER funds to pay Ms. LoBianco. It's my understanding that these funds are supposed to primarily be used to address learning loss from the pandemic. I would like to point out that this will be the 3rd time since 2021 that you will hire Ms. LoBianco to provide training to the Health and PE department. And this means that she will have received $4,150 from our district to train our PE department on these standards. Our children deserve to have these ESSER funds go towards helping them regain what they lost during the shutdown, instead of biased training for the new health standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stephenson. Any other comments? Mrs. Menzer, there's a comment online, if you could read it into the record.
Jen.
Oh, Jen, I'm sorry.
The comment, Julie LaSaracina. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. There's a comment in the chat. Julie LaSaracina says, I am horrified and embarrassed that it has been concluded that a book that talks about eating PUSS IESs and buttholes meets the district's obligation. What obligation and objective is this particular book meeting that another book without such crash language could not meet?
Thank you. Not seeing any other comments. Public comment is closed. Did you hear that?
There's one more.
Oh, yeah.
The comment came through before you closed comments. It says, Julie LaSaracina says, if you can't say that word here, what business does it have in the library?
Thank you.
I'll mention, I talked to Ms. Pouch about Judy LoBianco coming for the Professional Development Day. She's from Shape NJ, which is the Society for Health and PE Educators. We've used her multiple times in the past. From what Ms. Pouch said, her training will be a couple of hours on that March Professional Development Day, and she was actually going to focus more on physical education than health. Bethan, remind me, because I asked her in Ed Tech, we talked about it. Movement and achieving some of the new, because remember the PE standards changed as well, along with the health standards. So there were some things that she wanted to address with the staff in there as well. So I know that was going to be the focus of her time with our teachers. We've used her successfully, and we haven't had an issue with her in terms of questioning any of her professional development. It's been sound professional development from her organization, which is Shape NJ. In addition, we are using some ESSER funds, but I want the board to note too that the vast majority of the ESSER funds that we are using, that we receive, from the federal government, is going toward those after-school clubs, tutoring, virtual homework help, the mental health counselor that we have over at the middle school, as well as the summer programming for learning gaps. So, yes, this is in the amount of almost $2,000, I want to say. But please know that the majority of that ESSER funding is also gone directly in the hands of students. And this is a permissible use of our ESSER funds as well for health and physical education.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, moving on. We had one email correspondence regarding an app. Moving on to board action, approval of administrative minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt 1.01 to 1.02?
So moved, Beth.
Second, Camille.
Any questions or comments on the administrative reports? Not hearing any. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Betterman,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Mentor,
Yes, but abstain from 1.02.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes, abstain to 1.02.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosiello,
Yes.
Ms. Sample,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt 2.01?
So moved, Beth.
Second, Camille.
Any questions or comments on the minutes?
I just had one correction. There's a date that's not right for the NJSBA. One date that's not right for the NJSBA meeting. It says the 29th and it's actually the 19th. Not a big deal.
19th, and what does it say?
29.
It says the
29th.
29th, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Betterman,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Mentor,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosiello,
Yes.
Ms. Sample,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to finance facilities, can I get a motion to adopt 3.01 to 3.15?
So moved, Beth.
Second, Camille.
And do you have the committee report?
I do.
It wasn't in the portal.
It's there now.
Okay.
After I found it.
Yes, the Finance Committee met on Thursday, January the 12th, and the first topic we discussed was a Tewksbury Shared Services Agreement, which was severed effective January the 1st. This was mutually severed by both districts. There's no negative financial impact on our district, and our employees will have more time to focus on our schools. The next topic included substitute rates and the inflation impact on the minimum wage. The substitute rates for clerical aides, secretaries, and custodians will need to increase from $105 a day to $106 a day to meet the New Jersey minimum wage requirement based on the number of hours, which is 7.5 hours worked per day. The next topic were the rates for preschool tuition. The tuition rates have not increased in 2 years. So after discussion, a decision was made to increase the tuition by $20 a month or $200 for the school year for preschool. The next topic involved ACES, Utilities Consortium through NJSBA. This is a discussion regarding the Alliance for Competitive Energy Services, which saves us money for gas and electric costs. We agreed to rejoin ACES for free. We then talked about the RMS Winter Sports Chaperone for Safety, which is not to exceed $1,300. We agreed to hire chaperones for the RMS Winter Sports. We also discussed considering hiring a police officer at an hourly rate to provide security for winter sports after school hours, approximately 3 hours a day, only on the days needed. We then talked about the 23-24 capital projects, including the ROD SDA grants. That stands for Regular Operating Districts through the School Development Authority. And we're eligible for grants to support our capital projects, and we did agree to apply for these grants. We then talked about the E-rate proposals, and we agreed to submit an application for the federal grant money for our IT and internet costs. Next topic involved architect fees. We agreed to move forward with the architect fees for full board approval. We do enjoy a very good relationship with Centembrino Architects.
Next was about solar expansion, and we agreed to move forward with the next step for solar expansion at all 4 schools. The full board will need to vote to seek bids for solar expansion. And the Three Bridges School boiler topic was tabled, as well as the insurance renewal background information was also tabled. And then we set our next meeting date for Thursday, January 26th at 10:30 to go over the 23-24 budget. And then another meeting on Tuesday, February 14th for our regular finance meeting. And that's minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Cerciello. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes or the action items? There's a lot. Mrs. Betterman?
I just had a quick question about ACEs. So if we go forward with the solar expansion and ACEs no longer supports us because we have too much power that we're getting from our solar panels, is there any impact in that way, or we just cancel it and it's free? There's no impact?
There is an impact. I'm not sure which school. Right now, Jason, you're going to have to take that on because I know there are a couple schools that do not, I'm sorry, not this on. A couple schools are not already using ACEs because of that, exactly that reason. So moving forward, I don't know the impact of the solar expansion. So Jason?
No, that's right. So we have 2 schools that are not currently in ACES. They've been dropped because of the amount of solar we produce. Once you produce a certain amount of your own electricity, you're dropped from the program. We could alternatively go out for other things for those 2 schools, but from a financial aspect, it's not worth the costs or the fees involved with it. Very likely with the solar expansion, if we move forward, in the summer months, it may achieve 100% of our electric needs at the 4 buildings. And in the winter months, it may achieve 75% of our electric needs. So it very likely will be dropped at all 4 schools from ACES. So this resolution, although it's worthwhile right now, depending on if the board approves solar expansion and how long it takes to construct that, if we like the proposals we receive, we could be dropped from ACES down the line.
Any other questions or comments? All right, not hearing any. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Betterman,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Mentor,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Cerciello,
Yes.
Mrs. Sample.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to education technology, can I get a motion to adopt 4.01 to 4.11?
So move, Beth?
Second, Camille?
And we have a committee report.
Yes, we do. The Ed Tech Committee met on January 10th. The first item we discussed was the book complaint. The committee discussed the findings of the report regarding the grievance that was submitted requesting Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews to be removed from the RMS library. For policy 9130, public complaints and grievances, an ad hoc reconsideration committee was convened to review the book, and their final recommendation was that according to policy 2530 resource materials, this book meets the district's obligation to provide resources for self-selected texts that fulfill the 8th grade curriculum requirements, which include materials up to the 9th and 10th grade reading bands for students reading at higher levels. Parents can contact their child's librarian to discuss certain books or subject areas that they want to limit their child from checking out of the school library. Next, we discussed the YMCA after-school clubs. Dr. Hart presented new after-school clubs funded through ESSER ARP for grades K through 5 in the areas of math and language arts. This is in partnership with the YMCA of Bucks and Hunterdon counties. The math clubs Dream Through STEAM, which is Legos, Connects, that sort of thing, is open to K to 1 in both schools, White House and Three Bridges. STEAM Survivor, which is team math challenges, is for grades 2 to 3. Minecraft STEAM is grades 4 through 5. In language arts, Reading Olympics will be open to grades 1 through 3. The clubs will run for 8 weeks, beginning the week of February 6th. More clubs may open up later in the year as details get finalized and based on interest. Once approved by the board tonight, registration information will be shared with parents through Genesis. Next, we discussed the special education extended school year dates. Mrs. Beagle shared the dates for special education extended school year. The self-contained programs will run from July 5th through August 3rd.
Additionally, there will be an elementary supplemental reading program for selected eligible special education students, which will run from July 10th through July 28th. Next, we discussed the upcoming priorities in the curriculum budget. The areas pertaining to ed tech include revisions to math and ELA state standards, which is possible. This hasn't been completely finalized, but there has been talk of revising some of those standards. The technology infrastructure enhancements and student devices, possible expansion of certain programs, and continued professional development via presenters and consultants. We briefly talked about the relevant board goals. We will circle back to that. The agenda items, the ESY after school, extended school year classes, establishing the BD class at Three Bridges School, which is on our agenda, the YMCA clubs, the fundraisers, field trips, and presenters for the March Professional Development Day. And we set our next meeting for February 6th.
Thank you, Mrs. Fiore. Any questions or comments on the minutes or the action items?
Yeah, Carol, I had some comments I wanted to make on the book challenge, especially just because we're not going to be voting on it, from what I understand. So I wanted to say a few things. And look, it's a divisive topic. People are going to disagree on it. I get that. I think we've been looking at it the wrong way. I think the approach is wrong. I don't think it's a First Amendment issue or a free speech issue. Assuming we don't have in our library every single book that's ever been published, I mean, we're necessarily making decisions on what we're going to have in a finite space in our library. To me, it almost suggests a recommendation to children of what's available for them to read. And, if you look at that, it's not, no one wants to be portrayed as a book banner. I think if you look at it that way, the issue is not banning a book. It's, what books are appropriate to be in our library? What books are appropriate to be read by our students? Whether you're talking about removing a book or whether it's a book coming into the library, whatever point that book ended up in the library, is it appropriate? I think if you look at this book and the language that's in it, it's been repeated to us a couple times at public meetings. I think I blush every time. And it's obscene language. It's very foul, sexually graphic language. These are obscenities. And, the problem I have with the way the ad hoc committee looked at this is they didn't really look at the obscenities. They simply looked at whether the book won some awards, whether it had literary value, and they just kind of stopped there. And, there's no question the book has literary value. I read the book, I downloaded it instantly on my Kindle. It cost $7.95. I would say in response to this, the argument that parents have the right, I guess, to call the librarian and start talking about maybe available to their children. I mean, if you're a parent and you want your child to read the book, you can buy this book. It's available instantly. I'm a big proponent in parental rights and parents doing what they think's fit for their children. So by all means, buy the book, buy it with your friends, give it to your children if you want to. To me, that's not the issue. The issue is what's going to be in our library and what's going to be exposed to children who, the parents of whom are maybe busy and are not going to have time to go and talk to the librarian about books they may not even know are in the library. So I got the book, I read it, it's an entertaining book. It's a very funny book. I mean, I rather enjoyed the book as an adult. But given the language in it, and by the way, the language is replete throughout the book. It's not, if this were like a few swear words, some salty language, that kind of thing, it wouldn't make a difference to me. But the kind of things that's been repeated in our public meetings are replete throughout the book. There's no way in a million years that my girls are in 7th grade, I would never let them read the book. To me, it's like, I enjoy movies on Netflix that are R-rated, but I don't have my children watch them with me. And this is what it falls into. I mean, the question is obscenities. I don't know how you say that this is appropriate for even an 8th grader. I think maybe, definitely high school. I would say junior or senior year in high school. You know, it's not for me to say. I'm just trying to draw a line around our little district. And you know, once you look at it that way and look at the obscenities, we're not really dealing with that. We're simply saying the book has literary value. It treats these topics in a good way, and that's the end of it. And I don't think that's the way to approach it. There's got to be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of candidates for books that we could have children read. I don't, you know, this notion that what I read from the report, that as long as this author hit upon all the right issues with equity, diversity, and inclusion, we're not going to worry about all the obscenities in the book. And I don't know how you say that. And I can't imagine this author thought the book would be read by, you know, people as young as the 8th grade. I don't think that, and incidentally, the book, you know, the book is written from the perspective of a senior in high school. And you know, that's where all this language comes from. It does have, you know, it hits on all these topics. I have to tell you, I do find the portrayal of the Black family in the book, you know, pretty dated. I mean, I think this book is 10 or 12 years old. You know, I'm not sure it'll even get published today. That's just my view. It's you know, the portrayal of the Black family in the book it's very stereotypical. Now, I'm not suggesting I would ban it for that. I'm just saying that I don't know that on the other end of the balance that the book is really that great of a book. It's certainly entertaining. That's what I want to say about the book. I think one of the larger issues I also want to raise is how we've approached it with the policies. And the one difficulty I had was finding an applicable policy. And I looked through, you know, there's policy 2530, and then it seems like the more applicable policy is 9130. But when I look at that, it doesn't tell me how to, as a board member, how to handle material that contains obscene material, right? It just says, the standard is no book can be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. But I don't understand that this complainant was objecting to an idea in the book. She's just complaining about the obscenities. And I agree wholeheartedly that we should never remove a book based on an idea or a concept in it. You know, if this complainant complained about, you know, she didn't like the way the Black family was portrayed, or the way the topic of death was discussed, or that kind of thing. You know, if it was the LGBT character and a parent objected to, you know, that being in the book, I would absolutely say you don't remove a book for that. Children should be exposed to ideas they don't agree with, and we should challenge them that way. But that's not what the complainant was doing here. The way I understand, she's only complaining about the obscene material. And I don't see with all due respect, I don't see the committee, really dealing with that. They just sort of say it's a good book, and you know, the staff is just, you know, there's this notion that we don't ban books, period. And I don't think you can have that standard. So you're never going to remove a book that we find that may contain, especially obscene material. I don't think you can say that. And lastly, I just want to say I strongly disagree with the way we're handling it in terms of not being able to vote on it. The way I understand it, there's been a report. There's an ad hoc committee. You know, I had nothing to do with who was on the committee. Other board members did not. They did a report. I have no power to do anything about this report. I guess it's just being told to me. And unlike virtually every other action we take as a board, we're being told that we're not even gonna vote even to approve it. And, you know, it's difficult, we have to sit up here as board members and listen, we've listened to this complainant. And again, we have to hear the language in this book, and I have absolutely no power over it. I don't even have power to vote over it. And, you know, I think that's inappropriate. I think, if anything, this seems to fall squarely within, you know, our democratic role in the community to pass on things like this, pass about what's in our own library. So, you know, with that, those are my comments.
Thank you.
I can go over what the policy is in terms of the voting, if you want me to.
If you could, please.
Sure. Thank you. So in terms of voting on it, you're correct, it's policy 9130 is the right policy and regulation that addresses book complaints. And it provides that if the board is going to remove a book, then the board has to take action. And that's why, since the recommendation was not to remove the book, there's no action for the board to take. If a member of the
I'm sorry,
board,
but the policy doesn't say that.
it says that,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
it says if the board acts to remove the work complained of or to limit access to the work, its action will be accompanied to the person who made the complaint, essentially. So it's indicating that the board has to act if they're going to remove the book. There's no action the board has to take in order to keep the book in the library.
I'm
It's
sorry,
already
what
there.
is this referred to? I'm just curious.
That's in 9130. No, it's 9130. You have the policy, and then you have the regulation, which has the more specific.
All right, well, the regulation, if you're not talking about regulation, I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Look at the policy, it says no challenge material may be removed from the curriculum or from a collection of resource materials except by action of the Board of Education.
Right, which is the same. The board has to take action to remove, but doesn't have to take any action for it to remain.
Yeah, but
So there's
it
no
doesn't-
action to take
but it
to
doesn't-
remain.
It doesn't, at best, it's unclear. I don't read this as saying that.
But it doesn't prevent any member, if they wanted to make a motion. It would have to be seconded. The board
Okay,
members would have
motions
to
are
vote on it.
disruptive. I mean, we vote on everything. We vote on the most mundane personnel matter. You know, and with Dr. Hart, you know, we vote on HIB findings. And, you know, we vote on things where we just tend to, you know, we defer to Dr. Hart and the administration. When they do HIB findings, so as long as I've been here, we've deferred to their, you know, investigative role and their findings.
But the
This
board is
will we vote to approve it.
The board is required to take action on a HIB based on a statute and regulation.
Okay.
So the board is required by the statute or regulation to vote to either affirm, modify, or reject a HIB decision. So it's expressly required that the board take action.
Well, are you aware of any other circumstance besides book challenges where we don't vote, we just get a report from an ad hoc committee and that's the end of it?
Not necessarily a report from an ad hoc committee, but certainly if the superintendent is not recommending to renew somebody for a position, the superintendent simply doesn't make the recommendation, the board doesn't vote on that.
Okay, all right, I interrupted you, so go ahead.
That's okay, that's really my explanation in terms of the reason for the voting. Is there anything else you want to address?
I think that was it.
So Mr. Peach touched on many of the items that I had wanted to also mention, but according to District Policy 2530, there are 6 standards that we need to follow, and I guess I'm just having a hard time how 3 of those 6 standards are met by this book. Number 1 being the reading level. And actually, I don't know if we can go back to the committee with a question, but I would love to know what the reading level for this book is, and whether it is, and not the content, the actual reading level of the book. The other thing is the book is approximately 250 pages, and 73 of those pages contain vulgar sexual content. So it's not one scene, it's not a couple of pages, it's 73 pages. This is not like a teen romance novel, and I just have a hard time seeing what the educational value is for any student at RMS to read this book.
Well, if I could just, while the attorney's here, if I could just ask as well, there's no policy about obscenities, though. That's what I was looking for. And how do we judge obscenities? You know, the question is, I was looking for a policy about obscenities in material. And how are we to judge this if there's no, it talks about unpopular ideas, but that wasn't the basis for this challenge.
So there is Supreme Court precedent regarding removal of books from libraries of public school districts and implicating First Amendment issues. It does primarily focus on the censorship of ideas, as you discussed, but it certainly addresses concern about removing books from libraries being a First Amendment issue. There is some, I would say, dicta within the cases discussing the fact that pervasively vulgar information could be something that could be reviewed by a board or a school district generally. However, they cautioned the removal of books from public school libraries in general. But I don't think that necessarily our policies have to delineate every specific factor for the school district of what will be considered obscene or not obscene. It's left to the committee to make those determinations.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a question, Carol. So we're voting, we're not voting, we approve the minutes. If I vote to approve the minutes, am I approving them? I'm not approving them.
We don't, the minutes just get read into the record, but we don't vote on the minutes now.
Go ahead.
Sorry, that was me. All right, not hearing any other comments. Can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Behrman,
Yes.
Ms. Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Benzer,
Yes.
Ms. Peach,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
No to 4.05, yes, with balance.
Dr. Susiello,
Yes.
Ms. Zamble,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to personnel, can I get a motion to adopt 5.01 to 5.10?
So move that. Second, Jennifer.
And we did have a committee report. Can someone read those into the minutes?
Sure, I can read.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf.
There was a personnel committee meeting on January 13th at 8:45 a.m. Dr. Hart reviewed staffing updates. The committee reviewed the media communications for recruitment pilot, report of the retention and recruitment task force, housing development and enrollment update, the presentation that was going to be gone over for the full board and the tracking sheet, staffing projections for 2023 to 2024 follow-up ended up being tabled due to time constraints, and holiday scheduled for 12-month employees tabled due to time constraints. Also reviewed were personnel matters, and relevant board goals were Goal 1, settle an agreement with the RTEA before the end of the school year. Goal 5, to set budget parameters that effectively plan for enrollment growth, maintain the depth, breadth, and quality of the educational and co-curricular programs that are both sustainable and fiscally accountable to the community, evaluating and assessing our redistricting plans to accommodate shifts in student population. Agenda items are the housing development presentation, holiday schedule, and staffing. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 9th at 8:45 a.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes or the action items? Not hearing any. Can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Behrman,
Yes.
Ms. Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Benzer,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Susiello,
Yes.
Ms. Zamble,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to communication, can I get a motion to adopt 6.01?
I move that.
Second, Camille?
And we did not have a committee report, right?
I do have one. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the Policy and Communications Committee met on December 20th, which I know was a while ago. But we have our report tonight in our minutes. We had a discussion about the opt-out versus opt-in related to policy 5250, excusal from class or program. So Dr. Hart had reached out and gotten some information about what other districts who are using an opt-in approach are doing related to the new health curriculum, so we could learn about how this is working in practice. And we discussed several aspects of opt-in versus opt-out practices. They included the field trips and the limited scope of the current policy. All Board of Ed members had weighed in with the committee chair, and opinions were 6 members in support of the current opt-out policy and 2 in support of changing to an opt-in approach. And at the time where we took this input, we had a vacant seat, so that's why there's only 8 opinions. Dr. Hart explained that our current practice in the district is if a parent sends in a note requesting their child be excluded from sex education instruction, we honor that request even if it doesn't meet the exact criteria spelled out in the current policy, which is that there's a signed statement to the principal and we accept email in lieu of that. And generally they do a follow-up phone call just to make sure that there's understanding between the district and the parents' wishes. The committee requested Dr. Hart place policy 5250 on the policy tracking sheet, which, if you guys remember, is where we're tracking things that we don't necessarily recommend changes come before the board at this time, but that we've reviewed them, so that sort of like a placeholder and a reminder for us. So we recommended when there is a substantial update to this policy from Strauss Esme that there are some minor clarifications that can be included. So at this time, we're not recommending any update to the policy. Dr. Hart explained a letter to parents regarding the health curriculum content and lesson timing will be sent out after spring break. And we will track numbers of opt-outs this year, and we can revisit the opt-out policy if it's needed after we get some data from this year. The next policy that we looked into was policy 5511, student dress and grooming. An updated policy was presented to the committee. It had been reviewed by the district's leadership team 2 times, and administrators felt strongly that the policy continued to include a detailed list of dress code requirements and exclusions because they could utilize that list if and when they need to enforce the dress code policy with students. The committee discussed how the dress code policy changes with changing fashion. It was interesting to look at it and see bicycle shorts in there, which are no longer such an issue for us because fashion trends have changed. So we did request the bullet items regarding straps on all tops and regarding no undergarments being visible be reviewed again by the middle school administration. The feeling was that this could disproportionately affect girls, and current clothing fashion sometimes has girls' bra straps visible, even though it's otherwise a modest outfit, and having straps on a top does not make it any more modest than those without straps, was the feeling of some of the committee members. So right now we're going back to the committee with this policy. If any of the board members have input and opinions on that, feel free to respond. Jennifer Wolf is now the committee chair, so you can go ahead and respond back to her. Proposed new policy 0169.02 is board member use of social networks. This model policy was reviewed by the committee, and we discussed the need for this policy versus using the board's code of ethics. The committee felt at this time the code of ethics addresses issues that could be encountered by a board member's use of social media, and we do not require a separate policy at this time. Another proposed new policy is 2560.01 for the therapy dog program. This policy needs to be in place prior to beginning the therapy dog program at RMS this spring. The therapy dog will be phased in slowly to allow the dog to acclimate to the school, and meetings with students will be individual at the beginning of the program. The proposed policy was developed based on a model Strauss Esme policy with input from our insurance company and board attorney. And there were several comments from the committee members for clarifying language of terms used, required information from the therapy dog's handler, allowance for incidental costs associated with having the dog, and adding an option to crate the dog if needed, and also including student behavior expectations to the policy. The proposed policy will be shared with a therapy dog handler to provide user perspective and ensure that it's realistic what we have in place. After the policy committee meeting, Dr. Hart did some additional research and it indicated that we need to go back and there's further discussion. So this will be again on the agenda for the next policy meeting, so there's no policy to be adopted tonight on the therapy dog program. We also talked about relevant board goals. We talked about board goals 2 and 4. Goal 2 is to engage in activities that advocate for our community's needs. And goal 4 is to continue to improve communications and to expand community engagement with all stakeholders. Our efforts will continue to focus on transparency, broadening our efforts beyond our locality, highlighting and celebrating district accomplishments with an emphasis on our sustainability and greening initiatives, and developing collaborations with our local governmental entities. The committee discussed what it looks like to measure progress and sample activities related to accomplishing these goals. And we made a suggestion to add an agenda item each month for this committee related to advocacy to ensure we're focusing on it. We gave some examples of recent activities related to the goals, like allowing the 4 schools to have police officers, health curriculum parent information night, the addition of the policy tracking sheet, as steps we've taken to accomplish those goals. A comment was made that goal number 4 pertains to the Green Committee as well, but that committee only meets quarterly. So some of those steps towards goal 4, we said would come through the Policy and Communications Committee because it relates to communications and advocacy. So those will come through there. An example is a proposed celebration of the Biosphere at TBS, which will be on Earth Day, potentially in April 2023. We also discussed the press releases and their schedules. Dr. Hook noted that we had several press releases in addition to those listed on our schedule, which is a really great thing, celebrating the achievement in our districts. So we're a little behind our schedule. We need to adjust a little bit, but upcoming will be some budget articles because it's our budget time of year. Kindergarten registration came out initially, and there will also be a reminder for that coming up. So we'll get back on schedule with those. So we have no agenda items. After all that talking, we have no agenda items for tonight. But I think it's important to note that we're trying to accomplish and move through a lot of items in our board meeting, even though some of those are not ready to come before the board tonight. Our next meeting is Tuesday, January 24th at 4:30, and we'll be meeting virtually. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Benner.
I just want to point out that I snuck an agenda item on here for you that honors your role as board members, and it's a resolution regarding January being Board Recognition Month. I don't think we've ever done this, but I think it'd be nice to bring to your attention and to the public's attention that January is Board of Education Recognition Month, and it recognizes the important work that you do completely voluntarily. So I'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you. All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Donovan,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Ms. Beach,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Cerciolo,
Yes.
Ms. Apple.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, do we have any unfinished business on the board? Not hearing any. Do we have any new business? Nope. All right. We are now open to the public. Anything on or off the agenda? Mrs. Wolf, are there any more online comments? No.
So in regards to the book challenge, I'm the parent who put the book challenge into play. At this point, there's nothing I can do. I know I can appeal it with, I think, the Commissioner of Education. I have some questions regarding the library Bill of Rights. for our 6th and 7th grade students, will they be allowed to take this book out from the library? Do you know if they will be, or is anyone allowed to answer that?
We usually answer at the end of public.
Okay, so it was my understanding that this book was only allowing 8th graders to take it out. And according to the Library Bill of Rights, you shouldn't restrict, once a book is in the library, you shouldn't restrict other people from being able to take out books, regardless of age or, anything like that. So to me, if this book is on the shelves in RMS library and is only for the 8th graders, then that goes against the 6th and 7th graders Bill of Rights. And then since it seems like this book is going to remain on the shelves, I had offered the librarian to volunteer my time to come up with some sort of system to alert parents of the content within this book, and if there are other books like this in the library where when their child takes this book out, they will be notified by a call from the librarian, or rather it be an email that lists the words that are in this book that their child will be reading. Some sort of alert system that will let them know that there's this sexually explicit content and these indecent words throughout this book. I counted 89 pages in the version I read. My son wasted 2 months of his 8th grade education on this book. He had trouble completing assignments using this book. I don't see how that brings educational value to him. He brought it to the attention of his teachers where where he said, I'm having trouble pulling quotes from this book because they all have curse words in them. And so he was unable to complete assignments. He was excused from the last assignment because that was when I stepped in. I had no idea that based on the cover of this book, based on it was award-winning and all this stuff, I had no idea that that would be inside it. I now know I can't trust the books within this library, and I will be reading cover to cover any book that my children brings home, and I really think that that is sad. I don't know, do we get I know I get a copy of the report. Do I get any opportunity for a rebuttal, or that's it? Decision's made, and that's it? So I'm disappointed. I had an idea that it wasn't gonna get pulled because I've read the NJEA and the NEA and all their opinions on this type of stuff. They want districts to report if parents are challenging books, and I know it's, not what they are, they really frown upon this, stating that it's book banning and all this, and that's not the case. And I really appreciate, Mr. Peach, I really appreciate what you said. That was my exact point of this book challenge, was it does not bring educational value. It's not book banning. You can go to the public library if you really want to read this book with your child. You can buy it off of Amazon. It's not banning this book. It is just removing it from a school library where your child is going to be using it for classroom assignments. And I don't know, I'm really disappointed, and I think it's really sad. But I guess I'll get my thoughts together maybe for the next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pinto. Any other comments?
Mr. Barton has a hand raised online.
Mr. Barton, online? Make sure you unmute if you're speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Great, thanks. So is this for comments or questions, this section, this part?
It's comments and questions. If you have a question, then we will do our best to answer at the end of public session. And if not, then we'll get back to you.
All right, so I just wanted to quickly, read some excerpts about this and have a follow-up question at the end here. So this is again for, found in Reading Middle School, where there's mostly 10 to 13-year-olds. This book, by all accounts, is for 15-plus-year-olds. So we're obviously quite a ways ahead of that by allowing 10 to 13-year-olds access to this book. So here's part of it. So, hey, Earl, can I watch Alphaville tonight. Why the hell not? I'm sorry, man. I have to hang out with this girl from synagogue. What? Are you gonna eat her pussy? Yeah, Earl, I'm gonna eat her pussy. Do you even know how to eat pussy? Not really. Papa Games never set you down and said, son, one day you're gonna have to eat that pussy? No, but he did teach me how to eat a butthole. Then later on he goes on to say, so you can be heterosexual or homosexual, and I feel like I understand that. Like you're a woman in a man's body or some shit. But thinking about how the fuck can somebody call thyself a bisexual? Man, ain't nobody like that. That fine ass girl is making me hard right now. No, wait, my mistake. That dude over there is the one that's making me hard. That don't make no goddamn sense. Craig, I guess sometimes I also wonder about that. Earl, goddamn, if you're serious, like for real, I'm bisexual, any person can get me hard, man, you must get a hard on from all kinds of freaky shit. Greg, I mean, some scientists think that everyone's actually a little bit of both, homo and hetero. Earl, nah, that don't make any damn sense at all. You're telling me right now you can look at some titties, get a hard on, look at some dude's funky dick, get another hard on? You're gonna tell me for real? Greg, I guess I can't say that, no. Earl, dog, take it a dump, hard on. Wendy's double cheeseburger, hard on. Computer virus that destroys all your shit, hard on. Earl, yo, I got a line for you. You want to get with that girl with the big ass titties? Yeah, give me a line. You walk up to that girl and say, girl, you might not know this about me, but I'm trisexual. Greg, okay. Earl. Girl's like, what the fuck? Earl, she's all confused. Then you drop the bomb. You're like, trisexual, girl, because I'm going to try to have sex with you. So I'd just like to know by show of hands here on the board, who thinks this material is appropriate for middle-aged school kids aged 10 to 13? Is no one on the board thinks that that's appropriate? Okay. So that, but it's appropriate to keep in school?
It was muted when he was talking, so he can't read the sentence.
He didn't hear you.
Oh.
Yeah, no,
At
he
the,
had me muted.
I don't feel that the book is appropriate for 10 to 13, or even 14-year-olds. Give the book to the high school. It doesn't need to be banned. It's just not appropriate for this age group.
Thank you, Mr. Barton.
Yep.
Yeah, Tom Curtis, White House. I just had a question regarding the committee that actually makes the decisions on the books. Who assembles that committee? What type of people are on the committee? And do all the board members know who these folks are? What approval process is there for the committee? So.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Any other questions or comments? All right. The public comment section is now closed on the agenda. Did you want to?
I can if you'd like me to. Mrs. DePinto, I'll send you a letter. I think I emailed you last week and said that I'll send you a copy of the report, and I'll have a letter that will tell you what next steps would be if you'd like. Per the policy, I'll give you the contact information of the Commissioner of Education if you wish to go in that route, but I'll also call you as well. And I don't know if I could provide a response that would, satisfy some of the questions that were being asked, except to say we did our best to follow what was outlined in the policy. We did our best to take something that was really subjective and make it objective with a rubric and with looking at the rating scales from organizations that rate books. This book was rated for ages 14 and up, 8th grade and up, 7th grade and up, and we used that criteria in order to write the report, although I was not on the committee. certainly allowed them to do their work as, without any interference from me or anyone, and let them read the book and fill out the rubrics as well as write the report. I've talked with our librarian about notification systems that we have in our school library as well. Books that are young adult books have certain criteria that has them flagged. Even in the electronic system, this book in particular can come up as flagged. That should be for 8th grade only. There may very well be a 6th or 7th grade student that wants to take it out. A parent would be notified if that happens, but because of the rating scales, I believe in reading the report, the committee thought it'd be important that we have some access based off of the age groups that were identified. So in terms of a rebuttal, if there's some other place that you'd like to go, I'll give you that information in my letter to you with a copy of the report as well. And we can talk, we can have a conversation, I'll give you a call.
Yeah, I just have two quick things, like, is decency not a standard for our students? And then also, I just hope that this decision was made in the best interest of our children and our community here in Readington, and not in the best interest of the NJEA and the NEA. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Curtis, I convened the committee based off of the policy. It says the superintendent appoints a committee to meet. The committee members have a certain criteria. A librarian member, thank you. The department head where the work is used, a teacher in the subject area of language arts, which is where the book is used, a library staff member, a board member, and a lay person that has knowledge or some kind of familiarity of the work. So that was the committee that was convened, and the principal, and then the principal of the building where the work is used. So that was the committee that was formed in order to review the book. To answer your question. And I think that was everything.
Can I just ask one more question? The public things are over, but would it make sense to have some type of addition to criteria for the book as to whether it's pornographic or not? I mean, at some point, that's struck me that any book, provided it meets certain criteria, no matter how pornographic it might be, it could be in the library.
The NJEA and the NEA, they all have talked about that part, and apparently it's not pornographic if it doesn't create an arousal in someone. So that this isn't considered pornographic, this is because it doesn't bring up, I already looked into all that, so it's just.
I think you answered all of the questions.
Yeah.
I need a motion to move to executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law to discuss RTEA negotiations and superintendent mid-year evaluation for approximately 1 hour, at which time the board expects to return to public session where action will not be taken. The matters discussed will be made public if and when the circumstances requiring confidentiality no longer exist. However, it is not presently known when such circumstances will exist.
So move, Beth?
Second, Randy?
And can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Benner?
Yes.
Mrs. Fields?
Yes.
Ms. Benzer?
Yes.
Mr. Beach?
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Wolf?
Yes.
Dr. Sosiello?
Yes.
Ms. Amble?
Yes. 8:18. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you.